Dudes to Dads is a podcast to help men understand and navigate the transition of being a single dude into a family man. How do we make sense of it all? Well, we probably won't be able to, but let's go ahead and have some fun trying. And we are back.
We are back.
I'm Jason Kreidman.
I'm Alan Bush.
And this is Dudes to Dads. How's it going, Alan?
Wonderful.
Oh, with a sigh.
Yeah. Not
always those hidden messages. It's wonderful, yet I'm breathing heavy because it's not really
a long, drawn-out day, but good.
Awesome.
It's really good.
We have a very special guest today, Jim, who we'll just call him Jim. He's a friend of mine. I've known Jim for many years. And the topic for today is raising a child with special needs. So Jim, I'll let him talk. That's the purpose of him being here. But basically, going through some of the blessings, some of the difficulties, some of the challenges, and some of the wonderful things that he's experienced. And the purpose of this is to help dads who might be, they're finding out that they're pregnant. That's the first step. And then they find out that there might be something going on that they, need to either be, educated on or concerned about or something like that. So that's kind of the purpose of today. And so with that, Jim, I want to say hello. How are you?
Hello. Nice to see you, Jason. Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you.
So why don't you give us just a brief intro to your son? You have an only child. Give us just a little bit of an intro to who he is, and we'll sort of start there.
Okay. TJ is what we like to call him. Mm-hmm. He's 22 years old, and he is a very active, person in the community, and he continues to learn at his pace, continues to provide love and support, and is a definite contributing member of society. So we try to count those blessings as we go through our days.
And I know him personally too, and he is a wonderful person. I enjoy hanging out with him. We have great times. I want to start sort of from the beginning of how did you know that there was something going on? Was this something that, prior to birth, people do tests. There's a lot of tests that can happen or different things. Was this something you knew prior to birth?
No.
Okay.
No, this happened about 18 months when he wasn't walking, didn't roll over, speech wasn't where it should be, for somebody at that age.
So there's no visible signs?
There were no, and he was our only son. So
you didn't kind of know what to look for.
I had no idea, right. And either did, my wife. And he checked out fine. I mean, he was healthy and continues to be healthy. But then there was, some auditory and some vision, skills that were diminished that we found out about 18 months into his progression.
And is that just like with a doctor's visit, or was it something you noticed and said, maybe we should have this more checked out?
We went to more specialists after, the, 16 to 18 months.
Yeah.
And then, they gave us challenges to challenge ourselves on how to challenge him to
test him,
to grab a tennis ball, or to try to get him to roll over, or all kinds of vision therapy and speech therapy. So
at that time, how were you feeling? You're the proud dad. You have a 18-month-old, and knowing for myself of how much you want for your child at that time. I know that that's how I felt. Oh, I can't wait till he does this, or I can't wait till they're going to do this. How were you feeling at that time?
Well,
if you can remember.
As any parent, you want the best for your child. So I was confused. and a little bit heartbroken. It was a disheartening reality. But then you just have to change your goals and refocus yourself, because it's not really about
what you want.
Yeah. Right. It's really, how are you going to embrace and help the person that's in front of you?
Got it. So you're at about 18 months. You find this out. You then, it sounds like you were taking him to specialists. You were doing more things and becoming a little bit more active than you traditionally need to be. With a kid who doesn't experience this. How then? What happened then into the sort of the next couple of years? Let's call it toddlers. Did that development continue to be stalled? Was there just slower progress, or how did that sort of go within the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't stall. I mean, because he continued to learn. He would continue to eat well and be healthy. It was just keeping up with, quote unquote, the average.
Did they provide you any diagnosis at that time?
Not even still today.
So it was basically,
they don't know what it is?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
So they said there's, delays in auditory or delays in motor skills, but they really didn't give it a name.
There's no name for it.
Interesting.
Wow.
Right. It's not autism. He does have Tourette's, now.
Does
he go through periods of that, or is that?
Yeah, periods of tics. I mean, when he was a real youngster, 12 to 18 months, he would sit in his bouncy chair and wave his arm back and forth to make himself bounce,
Got it.
And so that was his way of trying to cope with, what he was doing. When he was happy that he was going to eat, he would, bang on the little, tray in front of him.
I might still do that.
Yeah. To show his joy, at that time.
Was that, not having a diagnosis, did that make it more difficult?
It's frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, because you kind of say, well, how do we work with this?
But you can't fix it.
Right now.
So
there's no fix.
There's no fix. So, I mean, that was once you wrap your head around that there is no fix, and that we're all individuals, and everybody's going to learn and progress at their own pace.
Right.
Then you could set into, how are we going to help this individual? And so then the reality was, okay, let's do the best we can with each day that that we're trying to teach him.
And how?
It wasn't trying to fix.
Yeah, no, of course not. Of course not. What about the effects on your relationship? I would imagine you're putting in a lot of effort towards the child, which people are anyways at that age. There's some extra stresses that probably come up. And like you said, there's some frustrations. There's not knowing. I mean, that alone, just not knowing what to do, is a big frustration with all parents. Let alone like you have another bucket of unknowns to deal with. How was the stress on the relationship?
Well, Debbie and I kind of took turns, and she did more of the matronly thing, and I did more of the activity things. She did more of the child advocate things. I did more of the social things. So it brought us together as a whole. But as if you were going to be selfish, I could see how it would, obviously you're not.
There's a lot of effort towards the child versus which happens anyways.
Right.
But that puts a strain in itself. I mean, just not paying attention as much to the relationship.
Right.
You're gonna.
So you'd have date nights, and you'd have, grandmas and aunts and people come over and so that you could get out.
I mean, that's with every. Yeah. I would imagine any kid, any child, if you have a child that you need to take care of, then that's going to happen.
Was there any additional support network? Meaning, when you're faced with this, was that a conscious decision to seek out others that might be going through it as well?
You have to look for child advocates that are experts in the field, and then they would give you key points to look for and milestones to praise him for.
Right.
So that is definitely something that you'd want to start at an early.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking more of. And the reason this came about is I knew somebody who had somebody that was in their family with some severe issues. And one of the things that helped the child the most was the socialization with other children who were experiencing the same thing. So I didn't, that's one of the things, I guess, when you don't have a diagnosis, you're sort of limited to that. It's like you said, if you have autism, you hang out with other kids that have autism because then they understand each other or whatever. I'm ignorant to that, but I'm just saying, did you have that social outlet at that time?
Well, we chose to go the opposite direction.
Okay.
Knowing that he had some limited skills, we let him. I was kindergarten dad.
Got it.
So I took 2 years off. Debbie took 5 years off, and we kind of went back and forth. I was kindergarten dad and got him socially entrenched with the community at a very young age. And
so you were all in.
I was all in, and
which I know you like that term. All in.
I love that term.
And
he embraced that, and I think that helped a lot of the children that were his age at that time to be more compassionate and to accept him for who he is.
At that time, because I know now there's some differences where children who have some special needs typically have an aide if they're in regular school. At least where we live, they have an aide who's literally, in most cases, with them full time within the public school. Was that the case early on?
No, he definitely had preferential treatment of sitting close to the front of the class, so that he.
But he was in regular classes.
Regular classes until like middle school. Once he got into middle school, then he would have at least one class that was just a special needs class, and so that they could try to
a little more focus
on the reading, writing, and math. And then in high school, he went through it's called the TAPS program, and it's just a transitional educational program that.
So were his classes different from the other mainstream students?
We still let him and encouraged him and talked to the staff to have him do at least 2 other classes outside of that.
Got it.
Outside of those services, to keep him ingrained in the school and not segregated.
Right. Yeah, I could see, it's pretty commendable. Obviously, you don't think of it that way because it's your child and you're just doing it. But the idea of how much you put into it and going all in, and the idea, I'm going to take off 2 years and I'm going to dedicate myself to my child's education and make it. I mean, that's awesome. And your wife doing the same thing. For people who might not have the ability to do that, whether it's a lack of income, lack of support around them or so, are there anything that can you suggest now? I think it might be a little different where there are aides, there's maybe a little bit more assistance from the state and some other things, but how can somebody do some of those things that you did? Like if you say, well, make sure you're showing up to PTA meetings, make sure you're involved and the other parents, and make sure, there's some things like that maybe that they could do that aren't quite them having the full-time ability to do that.
Right. I think one thing that is key is understanding and knowing the staff. So in any school system, you want to make sure that you understand the principal, the assistant principal, the staff members that are around your child, and get to know them on a personal basis so that if there is an issue or a problem, it doesn't become an issue or a problem.
Got it.
You can nip it right away. Yeah, you can. It's an open door policy. But if you don't know who they are and you walk in, then they're going to say, "Well, I'm super busy."
Right.
So when he was in kindergarten, he was getting picked on. For a quick story, and Debbie told me, "You got to fix it. You're at the school anyway." So I just went into the principal's office. He knew who I was, and I said, "I have to sit here and tell you." Until we fix this problem.
Right.
And he said, I have to do my rounds. I said, okay. well, I'll be here when you get back. And he said, really? I said, yep. And so he came back an hour and a half later or whatever. I was sitting there, and he was like, you weren't kidding. I said, no, I have to get satisfaction before I go. And so we walked into the class and had a discussion with the other kids, and
so there was some bullying, essentially.
Educating the other kids on, how we're all going to get along. And that helped, the overall, child base. And it also helped TJ's educational wherewithal to where then he felt safe and secure sitting next to somebody saying, hey, I need help, with this project, program, whatever. Right. And so then it really started to take off from there.
Got it. Yeah, I can imagine that's difficult where, nowadays there's such a huge, call it emphasis or an awareness, I should say, on bullying. People are very aware of it. Back then, even when we were going through school or your son was going through school, there wasn't as much, even if it was 10 years ago, there just was, and it was happening. And I can imagine there was situations throughout his schooling, which happens now. Was that a sort of constant issue? I mean, or was it something, or because you knew a lot of the students and because you were sort of very involved, maybe did they treat him better?
Well, because we were very involved, and I would strongly recommend, anybody that has a special needs child not to set them aside and make sure that, that they stay active and involved. Because we were so involved, the kids ended up embracing him. And some kids would carry his backpack up the walkway for him if it, was too heavy with whatever school activities there was. He wasn't always the last person picked, on the playground to play Foursquare or hopscotch or any of those things. So I think that keeping them involved,
there was there was acceptance.
There was definite acceptance by the children at a young age.
Yeah, that's
which is commendable for them.
No, I think kids have a certain amount of empathy when they realize that that person needs help. When you can make that aware to them, then they do. Oh, okay. Let me make sure I'm not being a jerk. When you don't, when you're just kind of the average kid, like when you just get picked on, whatever. And if people don't realize that you actually have something that's wrong, or there's something that's not as quite as what they have, then they'll develop that kind of natural empathy.
I don't recall in my schooling that we had much education or communication about children who were different, who were considered, whether it was physically different, mentally, whatever, because I remember there being students like that, but I remember it's kind of it was up to the parents to kind of say, don't, treat everybody equal, and sort of those lessons versus actually having some communication within the schools that are saying, hey, there's going to be kids who learn different, look different, and that comes from anything, whether it's races and everything else. We're all the same and treating them the same. I feel like there's a little bit more communication about that now than there was.
I just find it fascinating that kids just kind of develop after they know. When you just tell them that's what's going on, they're like, oh, okay, let me help. And they kind of want to help. But I feel like most kids are good kids, if you really give them the chance to be.
Yeah, there's a couple bad eggs.
But there's a couple jerks out there, I'm pretty sure.
And if you let the parents get out of the way, then the kids actually are
good.
They're real humans that understand, and they want to be helpful, and they want to feel good about trying to do their best with their peers,
trying to be good people,
right?
And you feel good about humanity,
right? It's when the parents kind of get in the way and say, "Oh no, you don't want to." Yeah. It's the same thing in sports. We love sports because you're playing for an ultimate goal to win, but sometimes in losing, in a loss, you learn more than you might when you're winning. So and the kids understand that more than the parents, I think, sometimes.
Well, you had mentioned sports. I think one of the things when we were talking before was that you kept him very active and you kept him involved with a lot of different things. So that was, socially and everything else. But another thing you had said is, he participated in high school sports. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that and not only just the importance of what that was for you and him, but sort of, the value and what came about from that.
Yeah, at a young age, all kids will play soccer and t-ball and things of that nature. So we did that. But basketball was something that, as long as you could run, up and down the court, and at a young age, you could actually travel and they wouldn't call it. So as he got older, we wanted him to continue to work out and
exercise.
Yeah, exercise. And football, he could help by being a manager and moving around on the field there, but we didn't want him to get hit. Baseball, hand-eye coordination just wouldn't get it. So basketball seemed to be a natural fit.
He's a darn good shot too.
He's pretty good. Yeah. So we took on to basketball. And Coach Cassaw, I called him when he was going to be a freshman in high school and said, I want my son to try out. And he was like, oh, no, another dad that wants his son to try out to get a preferential treatment. And like 3 minutes into his tryout, he's like, all right, he's on the team. We'll make sure that, we have a spot for him. So they, literally carried a few extra kids because TJ was on the team, and some of these other parents were like, hey, I know they're not going to get a lot of playing time, but we want them to work out. We want to be a part of the team. We want them to be part of the the high school.
So there was
experience.
a couple students that were like that?
A few students that were like that, and they they weren't like the studs. I mean, if you were going to have a team, even in pros, you have 12, right, and only about 7 play. Right. So they kept 20, right, one time. So so these kids could work out and have
feel
after school. Yeah, be a part of a community inside the community. And he, was on the 2012 team that won the southern section of state and went the furthest that the school has ever gone. So
that's so funny. He actually, and I know there is a story where he got to play on the game.
He made his very first shot on the freshman team, and he made his very last shot on the varsity team, and every other shot in between didn't go in, but he still loved it. He loved it, and the coach just said it's tea time. You got to go in, and if it was for 45 seconds or whatever, and the other kids would, they understood that that he's going to get up a shot and see how it goes, and sometimes they'd get a rebound and give it back to him, but he loved it, and that he today would tell you that's the sweet spot of his high school. That's cool. Memory.
Yeah. Working out and just getting that exercise.
Or being a part of something.
Part of the team.
Yeah.
My high school, they let anybody join track. You didn't have to try out. Mm-hmm. So while there was obviously some winners, the fast kids, anybody who wanted to run could run with the team. Right. And it would be in the meets. It would just be like third string, fourth string. It wouldn't be on the seeded heats. You'd be on the kind of lesser ones. I was somewhere in the middle.
There's something to be said about that, with whether you're special needs or not, but the idea that when a children wants to participate, to allow them to participate, the idea is, it just seems like that through those growth stages, and especially when, they're going through teenagers, awkwardness, they just want to be a part of something. Yeah. Every kid just wants to feel they're a part of something. And when they're not, we've talked about this, where they're not a part of something good, they're going to be part of something that's bad. Mm-hmm. And the idea of being able to allow them to participate seems like a very good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so transitioning from kind of going on the timeline of, going from high school to now being an adult, he's now of adult age. How was that transition? While some of the students are, going off to college, or they are going and getting, a career, what was that sort of transition then after high school and saying, okay, now what are you going to do? Or what's the next step?
Well, I think this is the toughest stage, that he.
For him or you?
For him.
Okay.
For Debbie and I, the rule of the house is you have to go to school and work some job. So through high school, he found work and he's continued his education, which is good. But he sees his friends go off to 4-year universities, but a majority of them have come back. So we kind of try to keep him, to where it's realistic for you to, want to do that. And we would like you to do that. But look at these people and don't try to compare, yourself to them. But it's difficult out there. And so for him to now be a young adult, he's understanding more that, it is going to be very difficult, in moving forward. And, the main thing that we would like, him to learn at this time is you got to stay on time. You got to stay on point. You got to be honest. I mean, all the basics.
The responsibilities.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where his mind's starting to click with that right now.
Yeah, it's time for work. Got to get ready. Time for school. Got to get ready. Got to, do. It's the responsibilities, the routine, that kind of stuff. So does he, continue to progress in that sense where you said he's he's now even learning more. I mean, it continues every day is sort of, he continues to learn and learn. So there's not a stopping point. I mean, it's like all of us, you continue to learn every day.
Correct. And I mean, in continuing to learn, for any person, you can't leave your clothes on the floor.
Yeah.
You have to put your clothes away once they're washed and clean. You can't leave the dishes, on the counter so the dog will jump up there and eat it. I mean, all those
rules.
Yeah. Rules and regulations of life, are, really trying to, and it's almost like Groundhog Day, to where you'll tell him, or ask him to do the same task days in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I just told you, or just suggested that, we'll leave whenever you get all this picked up and you have your shoes on and we can walk out the door.
Right.
And so, I think that's where the patience comes in. You have to learn, patience and know that everybody's going to learn it at a different rate.
Yeah.
I know plenty of adults, even myself sometimes, will do the same thing over and over again and forget, I got to do that first. And
I never do that.
We're all
okay, once in a while.
That's what a blue moon.
Yeah. No, that's good. And so one of the things I want to do in kind of wrapping up or I should say not wrapping up, but summarizing sort of some tips. I wanted to give the listeners 5 nuggets, if you will, about, how or maybe ways that they can deal with this kind of situation. So maybe if we can focus on a couple of those and sort of go over those and explain them. And so the first one, which you had just mentioned was, and we talked about these beforehand, was patience. I've witnessed firsthand, the interaction between you and your son. And that was one of the first things that came to my mind was, the patience that you have and the requirement. And it's sort of, that's when we were talking about the blessings of, when you're in a situation like this, you have to slow down. For somebody who's maybe type A, real fast, you want things done real quickly, you have to all of a sudden slow down, be patient. And like you said, in a situation where you're going to might say the same thing over and over every day, you have to. Like, you don't have a choice. So is patience probably one of the number one things, that you can recommend to someone if they're looking at going through this, they just have to be prepared for that patience.
If you want any person to learn, you have to be patient with them, because we're all going to learn at different styles, different levels. And being patient is probably the biggest nugget, because you're going to lose your patience from time to time. And you have to catch yourself before it affects you, which then you lose, the focus of the child.
Right.
Yeah. The second thing we had talked about or mentioned was having presence. Maybe you can explain that. It's you being present. And I think when we went over talking about, in school and how you were the kindergarten dad, is that what you meant by that?
Yes. You definitely want to be a part of their life to where they don't feel that they're going to be segregated or out of touch, and being present and in the now just redefines their self-worth and their willingness to push themselves to be the best person they can be at that moment.
Right. No, that makes sense. A third thing, allowing more independence. So this was something that you had said that you felt like you might be able to improve upon, allowing, because, we've talked about this too, where we underestimate what our children can do, regardless of whether they have special needs or not.
Yeah.
We often will think, I'll do this for them. I'll help them get dressed. I'll make their lunch. I'll do, instead of allowing them to do it. So maybe you can touch on that in those kinds of situations.
Well, being independent is what we all want. Mm-hmm. And so,
and he really wants that.
TJ would love to have his own apartment, and he would love to live on his own. So we're teaching him how to cook, how to clean up after himself, and dressing, and not picking out his clothes. So you want to give them independence, even if it's at the expense of your time.
Right.
So a lot of times we don't have time. We're in
Get
a
your
fast
shoes on.
Yeah. We're in a fast-paced world. So you have to schedule your time to make sure that they can be independent, so that you don't demean them by doing it for them.
Well, and we do this, and we just recently touched on this, is that we do this and we do things for them out of love. We feel like, hey, I'm helping them. I love them. I want, it's the simple task, let's say, of getting dressed, I'll help them. It'll be easier. It'll be quicker. It'll be, easier for everybody. When the truth is we're not really helping them. What would ultimately help them is them being able to do it by themselves. And so that's a very, very good point, whether special needs or not, the idea of allowing them to do things. And I think you had said even allowing them to fail.
Correct. Well, and they have to pay the consequences. So if you're going to be independent, you almost
protected them too much.
Correct. Yeah. If you allow them to fail, so you're going to be late to class, well, then you might not get to go out for recess.
Right.
So instead of us rushing them in the everyday consequences of life.
Mm-hmm. And you feel like you might have protected too much against that, or didn't allow him to have that
at a young age.
Yeah.
And now he's over the top, independent, and very much on time. If he's supposed to be somewhere at 5 o'clock, if he's not there by 4:30, 4:45, he feels he's late, which is the John Wooden rule of school.
Got it.
So
that one you've got pretty good. We've
got that one nipped.
Yeah. And then the fourth one, which we talked about too, is keeping him social. So whether that was the basketball team, having friends over, just the normal, especially through the teenage years and all before that, being social is so important, of having that network. So maybe you can touch on that a little bit.
And keeping him socially sound in school, then after school programs. So the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, the children around the neighborhood, all those things help his self-esteem, and he won't isolate if we keep him. He has a faith group, and they meet.
Is that something that that happens a lot with those children? Is they do isolate themselves? That's sort of one of the things they say, well, I'd just rather do this, and they kind of do it by themselves.
And they sit.
Yeah.
And they, because they don't believe that they're going to
do something. Yeah.
Right. They sit with their stuffed animal because they know they're not going to get teased with it, or whatever that is. And I know that even the smallest of kids get teased. So Tej should be getting teased from time to time, himself.
Right.
And so I like to keep him out there, because the world's it's a big place.
Yeah.
And for any of us to isolate, I don't believe that that's healthy. And I believe that keeping him social has kept him, sound in that.
That's awesome.
In that way.
Yeah. And then the last item is education, and I think you kind of touched on the idea of both education for him, keeping him, his mind going and exercising his mind as well as his body, but then also the education for you, of maybe learning about the situation. So a father who is, just learning about what the situation is with their child, of diving in and learning as much as they can, to understand it.
Right. You want what's best for your child for first and foremost. So you want them to continue education, even if it's at a snail's pace, and you can't get frustrated with them because then they will get discouraged and they won't want to do it. And then the education for yourself is you want to reach out to people that are like TJ's 22. So if there was somebody that was 6, that family should reach out to my family or another, family to say, okay, look, how did you get from 6 to 22 and how are we going to, help ourselves? And we've done a lot of the legwork and we've asked, plenty of advocates and specialists and things of that nature. And so it's not that we can live your life, but we can definitely help. I mean, there's plenty of people out in the community that are in the same situation. That's why I think education and not isolation is key.
So maybe that, it's adding a 6th thing of being open and honest about the situation. You just like you didn't want him to sort of hide. I could see, when you don't really know what to do, that is a tendency for a lot of people to just clam up and not be social. And let's be candid, like they could be embarrassed. They could be angry. There's all kinds of things when you don't know what to do. And that idea of being open, being honest, reaching out, seems like that is the best track. For both you, him, your family, everything.
That is the best track. You cannot internalize it yourself. I mean, God made us all individuals. There is no rhyme or reason why. And so you don't want to.
I don't know if I could handle another me. So
yeah, I don't know if I could handle another you. But you want to make sure that you don't internalize it as a dad. You want to embrace every moment and every small victory, whatever that is. Please bust your dish. Please put your shoes, over by the front door so that you know where they're at.
Right.
Put your keys in the same spot every day. All those little victories are what you really want to do as a dad, and not just, isolate your child or get frustrated with them. It's healthy for both parties.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I really, really thank you for sharing the story. It's really important that dads understand when you're facing something like this, that you're not alone. That's probably one of the most important things. And the truth is that it's okay. It's going to be okay. The idea that you're able to turn these things into blessings. You have a wonderful child, healthy, happy, like you said, contributing member of society. That's what we want for our children. We want them to be happy, healthy, and contributing. So I really appreciate you, sharing the story. And if there's anybody who has, comments, questions, concerns at all, please be sure to email us, podcast@dudestodads.com. Alan, where else can they find us?
Twitter.
And?
At Dudes to Dads. And Facebook, dudestodads.com. And iTunes and Stitcher, please leave a review.
You like those reviews? I know.
Yeah, you got to get them up there.
Reviews.
5-star reviews. Yeah, a review is good. 5 stars would be great. And also we're now on YouTube as well. So make sure you subscribe to either YouTube, iTunes, or Stitcher, and leave a review, even if it's just to say hi.
That's awesome. Well, Jim, thank you very much. Also, TJ, hello. I want to say hi to TJ out there. And on behalf of Alan, Jim, and myself, Jason, we will see you next week.
See you next time.
Thank you.